have a quorum as of
Yeah.
Sheree coming in.
It's good. Got money to move forward. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, we can get underway.
Sounds good.
I should ask you how government politics day was.
Let
Get your feedback later.
me try to remember what was, yeah, it was actually really great. Yeah.
I felt bad that we were all in the
Wait, hold on,
same
give me
room
one
today, but we tried to get the council officers, but
Everything printed today.
yeah.
For a whole day.
Agenda.
Yeah.
Well, it was.
I had that in my own. I think it's red. Oh, no, this is the. Yeah, I had to leave a little early, so I missed the very end
Is the
part.
agenda in this?
Oh, the boards,
Yes.
yeah.
But I met everyone.
I'm the one on top.
You don't?
So,
You need mine?
heard about that part that's successful.
Wait, am I dumb? I might be dumb. I got one while you're
It's
at
a lot
it.
of people talking to people, but hopefully interesting.
Minutes.
And this one's the agenda.
Well, I guess I did one. Okay.
It's like he's a college professor or something.
I know, and I had.
I was like, dang, he was first thing and I was like, okay, here we go.
I
I'm in
know,
college, but I don't think I was.
probably in there and I'm just.
You know, 20 years ago, and I was like, I don't remember this guy being that dynamic. But
Yeah,
Yeah, he's gotten some airplay.
My brain.
Yeah, he seems to be about.
Wait,
like,
Ahsoka?
Well,
Yeah.
he
You gotta watch the cartoons.
Dance around, drive.
Yeah.
All right.
Snagging him, right?
Well, and the press Democrat looks like.
We'll leave this open.
Well, he's got good sound bites, so it's like, he like speaks in sound bites.
We can access to
Right.
that.
Otherwise, we can kick this off.
He's so good.
Okay, everyone, I'd like to call the August 23rd Community Advisory Board meeting to order. And we're going to start with roll call. Caitlin.
Member Chen? Member Diaz de Leon?
Present.
Member Holter? Here. Member Huang?
Here.
Member Inocencio?
Here.
Member Lange? Member Rom? Member Rodriguez?
Present.
Member Sierra? Member, Vice Chair Barnett?
Here.
And Chair Weeks.
Present.
Okay, let the record show that all CAB members are present, with the exception of Member Chen, Member Lange, Member Rom, and Member Sierra.
Excellent. All right. Moving right along to item number 2, which is public comment. So this is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction.
Yes,
So
sir.
say something. All right. Come right up, Dwayne.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. And I got to thinking as I sat here, I've been coming to these meetings for close to 30 years. You folks know there was a community action team that was formed in the mid-90s. That community action team basically didn't do much, but it kept itself alive and it's turned into a community advisory board. You folks are doing more than those folks did then. With that in mind, the community that I'm from should be something that gets on your radar. I don't know if you've ever been out there, but Roseland Census District, which runs along the north side of Roseland, Sebastopol Road, the commercial corridor runs down the middle, is actually the most disadvantaged, underserved, and overburdened community in the entire county. And as the city of Santa Rosa put together what it called its downtown specific plan, it made a point of including that Sebastopol Road portion from Dutton Avenue to the east. But at the state level, where the Department of Toxic Substance Control runs something called GeoTracker, which looks into areas that are polluted, they consider the entire Sebastopol Road from Olive Street to Stony Point Road to be in downtown Santa Rosa. And that's actually listed in Santa Rosa's housing plan from last year, pointing out that we are the only census district in all of Santa Rosa that is under the GeoTracker environmental stressors. I bring this up because basically that area doesn't have any real political strength at the bargaining table of the city. We have Jorge Inocencio here now, which is cool as hell. We also got Eddie Alvarez, who got elected 3 years ago. And we have other people on school boards and things like that that are doing things. But the real decision-making that goes on in the city of Santa Rosa is from the downtown core. It's from these business owners right around here. These folks got to play. You ever hear this story about two Hughes in the city of Santa Rosa. Back in the day, we had Hugh Cotting. He was the guy that controlled a lot of stuff. And then we got Hugh Futrell. And he has a lot of power and a lot of decisions that go on. What I'm here to talk to you about is that we actually need to have you folks do a bit of outreach. We had a guy in the past that you thought might was going to be doing more, Daniel Chappelle. Most folks never met the guy, never really saw what was going on. And we need to have people from this body, along with Jorge and others, to come out there and meet up with folks. Because we've been working on something for almost 30 years also, which we call the Roseland Neighborhood and Pomo Park and Preserve, all right? City staff calls it Roseland Creek Park. So keep it in mind, Pomo Park and Preserve in Roseland. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate it.
I can't stay, I gotta go to a veterans meeting, but I'm sure you'll make good decisions not to spend some money. All the best to you.
We'll do our best.
Thanks,
All
Dwayne.
right, thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
I do not believe so, no. No, we do not.
Is there any public comment in the community engagement email?
Not that I'm aware of.
All righty then. With that, we'll close public comment and we'll move to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Does anyone have amendments to the minutes as they currently stand? And if not, I see everyone hurriedly searching.
We're all searching to see if we were present or not at that meeting. It was a while ago.
Not hearing anyone speak up, I'm going to say they are approved as submitted. It's a new thing I learned we can do. And we will move right along to item number 4, CAB announcements and issues of concern to city residents. Would anyone like to start us off? Member Arnett.
So last week, I went to a community meeting for Friends of the Prince Memorial Greenway. They're going to be having a follow-up meeting on Wednesday, August 31st. They're looking for organizations, residents, nonprofits that are interested in participating in the long-term visioning and support of the Prince Memorial Greenway, which I found out at this meeting is actually like 1.2 miles in total from the Fish to Pearson Street that they're working on. So, but I want to put it out there to members of the board, anyone who's interested in this little jewel of Santa Rosa that we're trying to come up with a long-term support plan for. You can get a hold of me. You can also reach out to Steve Rubinowitz. He's a former city council member. He's also heading up the volunteer effort with it. So yeah.
Do you also potentially have comments on a certain event we just held at Finley?
Ooh, you want to talk about Wildfire Ready? I want Lon to talk about Wildfire Ready, but it was bonkers. It was very well attended, and I think everybody there, the call out was heard by the residents, so it was like 400 plus. But I want Lon to talk about it because he was behind the scenes with it. But it was very well attended. Every booth was swamped. There was lots of questions. It definitely played into the Press Democrat press release and the recent fires in Maui and the fact that we have extraordinary fires going on up along the Pacific Northwest. But it was very well attended and there was a lot of residents there that were very engaged and wanted information. So it was really good.
Sure, it's fueled interest. Anyone else?
I know next month is Streets to Creek or Creek Week, so I know the water department does a great job advertising, but they've got some fun activities planned. So look ahead to next month because I think it's before we meet again. Because it'd be great to see you all out there.
I just got an email for all of that.
It's gonna be fun.
Anyone else?
Just one thing to say about the community engagement division for the city. They put on the Violence Prevention Partnership put on a couple of events called the Community Wellness Pop-Up Events in 2 locations where there had been recent shootings. I attended those events on behalf of the organization that I'm with, and it was really good to see people engaging who don't normally go out to some of the events that might happen at Courthouse Square, might happen at Finley, might happen in other locations. Because in this case, VPP and other partners went to the apartments, went to the parks right by the residents. And so we were able to engage with folks who talked about how they felt about their neighborhoods, how they felt about the city, and hadn't interacted with any government officials before or anybody else that was affiliated with nonprofit groups. So that was really great to see VPP taking that step, going to the communities. And I would like to see that happening more often in that way.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Any other members?
I'd like to just bring up an issue that's kind of is happening in the Sinead project. Are you guys familiar with that project? The old center?
Definitely.
Okay. So on that property, there is a Sinead Historic Cemetery. And all access has been blocked by the developer to access that cemetery. And about 1,500 residents of Santa Rosa are buried there. 100 of them are of Chinese descent. You know, they were buried between 1878 and 1944. And a couple of weeks ago, the tombstones were all vandalized. Yeah, not just the Chinese, but a lot of the brass plates were vandalized, stolen, whatever. But we have no access to the cemetery because the developer is preventing access. I'm gonna go participate in a meeting over there Friday at 10:30 to see what, you know, how I can help. But I think that's something we should be aware of that's happening in our community.
Very good note, thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? All right. Well, first, you might notice we have a new person in the room. This is Caitlin. She will be taking over, and she is officially titled the
Admin secretary.
admin secretary. So she will be supporting us going forward. Very excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy the department. They look like they're pretty fun people, so I think you're in good hands. So that was the first thing. The second thing I wanted to announce is we have a number of movie in the park opportunities coming up at Howarth. I've gone to those in the past. They're usually a lot of fun. Ratatouille is actually coming up on the 15th of next month, which I don't know if you guys are Ratatouille fans, but it's kind of a fun movie. So I certainly welcome and encourage everyone if you can make it. It's a really good time. And then my favorite time of year is coming up. It's officially Oktoberfest again, which is very exciting. So there'll be a number of events that'll be popping up. I can see that there'll be one at the Finley Community Center on September 15th from 12 to 1:30. So come out for some BBQ and beer and we'll all have a good time. So very excited for that. And then an annual event that we've been holding for some time now, but I am not certain when it officially kicked off. And Sheree might actually have the answer to this, but the Merit Awards ceremony, which actually one of our former members was a recipient of, Vince, well-deserved. That will be taking place on September 18th from 7 to 8:30. And this is at the auditorium. Can you specify exactly, Lon, where that will be? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, so when you go in, it's to the left. So when you walk through the front door, so you walk into the complex to the left, and then once you walk in those double doors, you're gonna cut to the left, and it's the left-hand side of that area.
So like where the city council chamber is, or something different?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said it was just Finley, is it not?
Oh, is it the Finley? Did I say Finley? Did I say Finley? No, it just says at auditorium. Oh, wait, you know what? I bet it says at, it is 2060 West College Avenue.
That is Finley.
That is Finley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oof,
Okay.
did not know that off the top of my
That's
head.
what I thought. I just, when you said Cal, I was like, wait, I.
The auditorium, I do know where that is at Finley.
So-
Now that all makes sense. So I certainly invite you to come out, support some of our fellow community members and everything they've been doing in the community. It's usually a, really good time as well. So certainly encourage everyone, if you're available, be sure to come out. And I think that might be everything. I don't think I'm missing anything. But if I am, I'm sure Lon will cover it. Does anyone else have anything to share before we move forward? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so we will move on to item 5, staff updates, and I will let you take it away, Lon.
Great, thanks, Cal, I appreciate it. So first, back to the member Barnett had talked about Wildfire Ready, so I want Alexa to kind of chime in on this too. So the fire department, Alexa and I really kind of worked to plan this event for the last 6-7 months. It's been quite some time. It wildly successful. I was really happy with the outcome, as you mentioned. In the bigger picture, one of the things as engagement moved over, we started developing strategies and checklists and really coordinating with departments to walk through what an event looks like. We went over there with the fire department and really walked the facility and talked about like what happens when people come in here, what about when they're going there, really thought through the experience. And so I felt like it was worth the effort at the time. We saw the outcome. I couldn't be any happier with the team. My team was out there, police, fire, the emergency operations, and tons of other community members. And it was great. Weather was good. Participation was extremely higher than we anticipated. There was like 400 people that showed up at the beginning.
Right. So new this year, we gave away go bags that were grant funded through a Cal OES grant to our fire department. And we had requested RSVPs. So the first 150 people to RSVP and show up to the event would qualify for a free go bag, which was valued at about $65 per unit. It was a go bag for a family of 4. When I signed off Thursday evening, we had about 170 RSVPs. When I logged on Saturday morning to shut down everything, we had 389 RSVPs. So really wildly successful. And I think we had easily 400 people physically there.
First thing in the morning too.
Yeah, we realized, the go bags were a huge draw, but also new this year, we had 3 seminars that were education based. One was about home hardening, so talking about how vent screens and different modifications to your home could make it more resilient to wildfire. We had our emergency manager, Neil, and our fire marshal, Paul Lowenthal, talk about all of our alerting systems and how we would be more prepared in emergency in Santa Rosa and what residents can do to be prepared. And then we had a fire safe landscaping seminar as well to talk about different plants and how to not have huge trees right up next to your house. So really exciting. I think the seminars themselves were packed. I think we had at least 50, 60 people in each seminar throughout the day. So successful format this year.
We recorded those seminars with the intent to educate and push them out in the community beyond those. I realize not everybody on a Saturday can come out.
Right.
But I think, we worked with the IT team here to get all those recorded, and we'll be pushing those out on social and newsletter and stuff. So it's great. I'd love to see more things like that. So that's the plan. Next, I wanted to talk about a upcoming town hall. It's Council Member Alvarez and Santa Rosa Mayor Rogers to address recent gang violence and community safety. That is going to be Thursday, September 7th, 6 p.m. Roseland University Prep, 1931 Dewana Drive, number 1. So that's where it's located. And really, this provides an opportunity for an open forum for community members to express their concerns about community safety and share their ideas how to really solve some of the spike in gang violence and different things in the community. So that's coming up. Also, Fiesta de Independencia is going to be September 10th, 1 to 7 p.m. Luther Burbank Center. This event celebrates Latino Heritage Month with a taste of Latin American in Sonoma County. There'll be food, music, games, activities for the entire family. This is a free event. And what else? It's yeah, so we're one of the sponsors working with the police department, so they'll be there with the Mary Lou lowrider car. And finally, South Park, Day and Night Festival, September 23rd, 2 to 11 p.m. At Martin Luther King Jr. Park, annual community event featuring dancing, music, community, and lots of city booths. The police department again will be there and likely Hero. So that's my community update.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Am I allowed?
Go ahead.
For the wildfire event, is that expected to be annual?
Yeah, so
And was the COAD involved? Those are my two questions.
So, sorry, what was the second?
The COAD, the Community Organizations Active in Disaster.
Yes, I believe they were one of the exhibitors at the event.
Yeah, so we met to do a debrief just a few days ago with the intent of continually doing this. It's an important piece as we roll into wildfire season to kick this off. And I mean, it's part of the, it's part of the DNA of this community to make sure people are aware of things that have happened in the past and make sure that we are ready and coordinating with the community in a way that helps connect them in the event of an emergency. So it's super important for the city to do these type of events, as well as ongoing communication throughout the year for people to sign up for our emergency notifications in coordination with the county.
There's, the COAD also offers trainings on personal safety and preparedness related to go bags and what people should be adding to their go bags, also building out stay bags, et cetera. So if you're compiling videos for sort of ongoing use, it might be worth a shot to see if there might be a partnership there as well for
Maybe
adding
they
that
can
in.
do a presentation next year.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
They do that all over and they do it in English and Spanish.
Great.
Well, members of the COAD do it.
Cool.
Specifically Nuestra Comunidad and some other organizations.
Nuestra Comunidad was there too.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item number 6, scheduled items. And speaking of tonight, we are starting with 6.1, the 2023 Quarter 2 Community Improvement Grant Application Selection. For those of you who might not be aware, we have 5 grants we are considering today. We do have a fresh new $35,000 that was allocated to us by the city council during the budgeting. So we are once again flush. So we do have the funding to support all 5 grants today if we so wish. But this is the opportunity for all of you to now bring up areas of concern, support, et cetera, any comments you might have. It would definitely be appropriate to share those now. So just opening up the floor, does anyone have any initial takes, comments, et cetera?
We can do this as a consent item, couldn't we? Can somebody pull one of them?
We could,
Can you repeat how much we have over the course of?
35,000.
Yeah, so
I
there's,
did try to pitch the council for more.
indeed.
That's for the entire fiscal year.
That is correct, yes. So if we, spend this year, that's gonna,
If you approved all of them tonight, then we'd be left with $22,933 still.
and that's for the fiscal year. So we could
More
theoretically,
quarters,
yes. Yes,
3 more application cycles.
correct, yes. So that is something worth considering. And certainly we could try to encourage people to apply early because there's a greater chance that they will actually be selected because if there's not enough.
The goal of the entire thing of CIG is to run the funds out.
Yeah,
And get it to 0. And if we get it to 0 in record time, that just creates a compelling argument to council that we
to
need
give
more
us more.
funds.
Which I pitched some of them on. It's not successful this year, but we always have next year.
Alright.
Well,
I
anyways,
move that we approve all of the second quarter community improvement grants
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. We proceed with the roll call.
Sorry, who was the second?
Oh, me. Amy.
Unless there's any discussion, I think technically we do discussion first. If there's no discussion, we can do roll call.
Public comment.
Yeah, public.
Oh,
comment.
thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Barnett. Do we have any public comment? Okay,
Nothing on emails unless there's somebody on Zoom.
No, there's none.
all right, wonderful.
Okay.
Now we may proceed with roll call. Thank you.
And it's all right if I skip over the folks who aren't here.
Yes.
Fantastic. Member Diaz de Leon,
Yes.
Member Holter,
Yes.
Member Huang,
Yes.
Member Inocencio,
Yes.
Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett,
Yes.
Chair Weeks.
Yes, and just a final note, I have personally been to the APIC Community Gathering. It's a great event. I encourage you all to attend. I really enjoyed it last year and I'm really glad to see them hosting it once again. And all the other ones look great too, and I'm really happy to see Minor Beats come back. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fund them previously. That was a tough call. Really glad to see they persisted and will now be funded, so. Yes, good stuff happening. All right, with that said, we're moving on to 6.2, Civic Ready Test Message on May 31st. And I'll kick it over to you, Lon, or,
Thanks.
sorry, Alexa.
Yeah, so just real quick, we were gonna talk about this last time, obviously, in that meeting, so this was something that we had talked at a previous meeting, there was discussion and conversation to come back and discuss this particular event to the CAP, so that's why we're here. So I'm gonna turn it over to Alexa, who oversaw that particular event in our office in coordination with us and IT, et cetera.
Sure. Thank you, Lon. A little bit of history. So back in November of 2022 was when we officially transitioned away from Nixle as our communications tool to Civic Ready, which is more closely aligned with our website and some of our other tools. That being said, SoCo Alert is still our primary alerting mechanism. Civic Ready is a redundancy for SoCo Alert. And each year before fire season, we work with the community to send out a test message on all of our platforms. So this year we made arrangements to do that test on May 31st at approximately 10 o'clock in the morning. Regrettably and unforeseeably,
Real quick, let me just jump in on this.
Sure.
We spent a lot of time prepping, planning,
Right.
coordinating with the county, with our EOC, police and fire to like do this testing. It's a big deal for us to get this right. And so with that, under that guise, we're like super excited. We get to 10 and then I'll turn it back over to Alexa.
Right. So 10 o'clock, you press the send button, you're looking at your phone, you're asking your coworkers, are your phones going off? Regrettably, that test message coincided with an outage that our provider didn't even realize had happened. So their SMS provider, Twilio, evidently had unforeseen delays. So people were experiencing 6-hour plus delays with our test message. So it was really unlucky timing. But we, like I said, have Civic Ready as a redundancy for other emergency alerting systems. With that said, we successfully sent out a Civic Ready message about a prescribed burn that was happening on July 24th. That message was delivered to over 47,000 people within 10 minutes. And then as of Monday of this week, we have 47,707 contacts subscribed to the public safety alerts and 18,760 subscribed to the news alerts. So it was a little bit rocky on the 31st, but it's been a very reliable platform moving forward. And anybody who has questions about, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? It's not uncommon. We had service interruptions with Nixle. In fact, that was one of the challenges we had. I believe it was the glass fire and the repop and people entering zones that were previously evacuated. Our evacuation or our return home message was delayed by 24 hours with Nixle. So it's not something that's unheard of. However, like I said, we set up redundancies so that we have multiple alerting systems to cover all the bases. And that's really why we have all those layers in the Know Your Alerts matrix. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the test or when we're going to have another test. I know at Wildfire Ready, there were a lot of people asking about when we're going to have another test. So we've typically done it once a year. Because again, it's that delicate balance. We have a lot of voices saying, you're sending us messages all the time. How are we going to know when it's a real emergency? And then we have, people on the other side of the camp who are also wanting to make sure, is it still working? Is it still working? Is it still working? I was on the phone with a neighbor who I met at the Wildfire Ready event for half an hour this morning talking about our alerting system. So it's definitely top of mind for everybody. Any questions? Yes.
I knew, I think when we met many months ago, we talked about the Spanish version.
Yes.
Any update on that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that good news had been shared, but promptly after that meeting, we put the screws to the provider. We said, this is absolutely unacceptable. It's been in our product request queue for months now since we implemented it. And not only did they make it accessible in Spanish, it is now accessible in any language for the sign up form. So that was
any language now.
any language,
Oh.
right? So it's the Google, it's not, a human translation, it's, AI Google Translate, but you can toggle it to your language of choice, which is much better than how it was operating previously. So
Thank you.
that has been fixed.
Yeah, so I just wanted to call that out too, because I know you, for some reason, couldn't attend the last meeting, but we had talked with Alexa at that meeting, went back and then came to the next meeting to be like, guess what? And we were like, she's not here. No! But we did take it very seriously. It was a big issue for us and we were happy that the vendor was very responsive and we were able to solve that and beyond just the Spanish. So it's good, great.
That is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we appreciate feedback like that. That's what helps us make it more, usable and user-friendly for the community. So please keep the feedback coming. It's appreciated.
Any other questions, comments?
One question, and sorry if you covered this, but when it gets sent out, how do you know that it's received on the other end? Are you alerted somehow that it made it to 47,000? Is there some kind of check that you do with a few folks to kind of verify that it did get there?
So on our administrator dashboard, once a message is sent, I see all the recipients who were on the list that I sent it to. I will then see a timestamp for when they have received it. I can't tell if they opened it necessarily, but I can say text message was received at this time, email message was sent at this time. And that's actually a huge bonus because I didn't have that availability or that visibility with Nixle. I just saw yes, it was served to 10,000 people. Yeah. But this way, if there is a concern and a resident doesn't think they got it, they can call me and I can look them up and say, on my end, it says this, and we can troubleshoot it even further. So yes, I have very granular view of who received what message. It's nice.
That's good to know because that actually leads into my question. How many households or places of living are we connecting with out of the 40-something odd thousand?
That would I would have to hammer in on the data a little bit. So I can export our 47,000 contacts to an Excel sheet. If that person did place an address, then I can sort it by address and see, okay, there's 4 people with the same address. However, there are a significant number of individuals who didn't feel comfortable sharing their address. So they'll just say Santa Rosa, California. So I wouldn't have an exact accurate number, but I can come back with a loose figure of how many households that means.
Well, that would be
So
interesting.
on that, it was a strategic move for us to try to collect only the data that we absolutely needed to not create a barrier for people that wanted to collect everything.
Right.
And we heard that loud and clear that when we're transitioning over, it's hey, and so there's certain things we absolutely need, like their email or phone number. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, we tried to keep it as loose as possible. It's our goal is to extend our reach and to push that message out. And if it takes having less data to do that, to connect, then it felt like it was an important piece to do. But it does, in this case, if somebody doesn't want to provide that, it does hamper us on certain elements for sure.
Okay. I just thought it'd be generally interesting if like we could have like a sense, because obviously not everyone's going to submit their address, but if we have a sense of where there's higher concentrations of people that are signing up for these alerts, well, then maybe we go to the other areas and we try to do some more concentrated outreach there, just to make sure. I mean, maybe they are signed up, but they didn't provide their address, but it's better safe than sorry. And
No, I
make sure
like
that
that
they,
about that.
yeah.
Let's talk about that, Alexa.
Definitely.
Our meeting.
Or at least zip code to be able to see.
Yeah, or at least a
At
zip
some
code.
level.
Exactly. So then we could break it down. So it's not revealing anything that's super sensitive in terms of where they live, but it gives us a general sense.
Right. Okay. No, that's excellent.
That's a great idea.
Because, you know, we do have a 40, whatever you said was the big number,
Yes.
but it'd be really cool if we could get it even higher because, you
Yes.
know, more alerts, more safe. Yeah. Oh, member Renee.
So we now know that the data is broad. So the impression I get is that the city's initial outreach campaign was citywide broad. What I'm wondering about is if we do get some targeting stuff, if we could break it down into the council districts. And what I'd like to potentially consider, if it came back to CAB as an outreach campaign, is taking Civic Ready and targeting into the areas that we're seeing lower enrollment. So if we're seeing an example of neighborhoods perhaps in Oakmont or neighborhoods perhaps in Roseland, or if we're finding that certain zip codes are not showing up in the database, taking it back on CAB since we do have at-large and end district, and considering doing a targeted outreach campaign to those neighborhoods, identifying neighborhood associations and bringing it to them in a wildfire ready-esque kind of thing of like, we want to do preparedness in this neighborhood and having this piece of it. And if there's barriers too, that's the other big question to find out, right? Is that neighborhood a predominance of people in there or just not interested in texting, you know? And then the other question I have is, we get it on our phone, you can see from there. Is there any other secondary, i.e. does it go out? Because I know you can do PSAs to radio stations, but is there any other way to get it out, broadcast it so that when the alert comes out that it can go to news organizations and radio organizations, both in English and in Spanish, as a secondary to folks that may not be looking at their phone, as that may sound, but just another way that people can get an alert that there's a fire, there's a flood,
Right.
there's a dam, you know, there's a blockage and there's a flood, you know. Is that possible or is that a separate system?
No, so we've actually built that into the system. So the police department uses Civic Ready solely for their press release distribution. So the list on, now they're not on the alerts, but we send alerts to news people too, whether they want it or not. But there's quite a few reporters on the news distribution list.
And just a note that there is a hand radio network being
Oh, okay.
formed, where hand radios will be stationed at specified locations where there may be a resource center or something like that during a disaster. So that's something that I can try to keep you up to
In the
date
loop.
with that.
That would be
It could
fantastic.
go out that way. That's of course if we lose cell service and Wi-Fi or electricity.
Which just happened.
Which happens, yes. I guess my other comment in addition, because I think those are perfect ideas. The SoCal, do you have access to the data from SoCal alerts or SoCo alerts?
Yeah, so CoAlert is a totally different animal. In fact, that's a cooperative agreement with the county. It's actually the county's product that we have the keys to. I think it's Redcom, no, not Redcom. SoCo Red, it's some special product. But that falls under the IPAWS regulations, which are pretty tight. So the people who can send SoCo alerts are our emergency manager and our assistant, their emergency manager, and maybe Paul Lowenthal, our fire marshal. But it's
Just in
very
terms
small.
of like where we want to target our outreach, do you think we'd be able to get just aggregate data also from SoCo alerts to help us determine where to do that targeted outreach? Because the SoCo alerts really are the life-saving alerts, right? Civic Ready is a redundancy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of doing these data-driven activities,
Yeah.
if it's possible to ask for that as
Reach out
well.
to the county, I mean,
Good
we coordinate
partnership.
with them a significant amount with so much going on between us and ask, but I actually just, I don't know. But we'll
Yeah,
find
I would
don't
think as
know.
long as it's aggregate, it should be okay, but who knows?
some element to that, but then I guess the other part is just the privacy piece of like signing up and then not sharing that information, so.
Well, yeah, not asking for
No,
personal
no, I know you're
identifier.
not, but like even amongst, like, the city doesn't provide our data to anybody else for any reasons, but we do coordinate with the county on this, it is a little different.
Yeah, but even proprietary, because like Nixle, it was a proprietary list for Nixle, like
Right,
we
you
couldn't
couldn't
see
even
it.
see it.
So I don't know if
Couldn't
it's,
get in.
I hope it's not.
So
But
let me just reach out and see where this goes, because there's a tech part and other elements that I'm just not aware of to get into that to even see it. But it
Yeah,
could
no,
be-
you certainly don't want to see all of it, but just the asking for a list of like where, in what zip codes are people tending to have access and in what zip codes are they?
Yeah, we'll find out.
Are there fewer
what we
people
can- Yeah, what's available. It might have, it might be robust, but like we mentioned, since some other platforms, you couldn't even get in to see if it got there, let alone who was signed up.
Right.
User, the account call, if there was an issue, you couldn't see it, you're like, you have to call them.
Which is good, yeah. We shouldn't be able to get in there.
Well, it is helpful now for us though, when someone calls and they're having an issue with the account, we can literally go into their account and go like, oh, whatever, reset something, send that, help walk them through. It's really helpful for us to have that, but great idea. We'll definitely coordinate. I'll reach out to Paul Gillison with the county and see what we can, there's got, we'll see where it goes.
If you need trouble, if you need trouble, let me know.
Yeah.
No, Paul's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really great plan, and I think I'd be more than willing if we're able to bring this to fruition, to do some walkings and late drops, go to door to door to whatever areas we need to. So yeah, keep us apprised. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? If none, then we will move right along. Thank you both for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. With that, we will move to item 6.3. This is the City of Santa Rosa Town Hall Framework, and I will kick it back to you, Lon.
Thanks, Cal. So one of the parts for CAB and just in general, working at city organizations or local government is like town hall type meetings. I think for me, one of the parts that I'm doing as the director of this department is trying to get organized. We spent the first 6 months of me being here, working with the team to get organized in our ERC. In the event that something happens, we walk in and create a hole and move folders over that are like already stuffed with information based on individual events and stuff that's happening. So as a continuation of the strategy of what we're trying to do and to be more efficient, I created this town hall framework to like help not just the city staff, but anybody that we're working with to, thanks, that's great, thank you. To have this to where it really is specific as to like what we need to be successful. So the very first thing is the purpose and the goals of the meeting. I've many years, it's just like, let's do a town hall for a town hall. And it's like, well, there needs to be a draw. What is the topic? What's like, how can we make it relevant? We need that to go out to the community and actually promote that. So like, to me, that's the very first thing. My first question, anytime somebody wants a meeting or something, is what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? So that's the first thing. Second, identifying the target audience as to like, okay, so we're going to do this. Where are we going to do it? What are we trying to accomplish? Again, that ties into this. Date, location, time, also important. Map out an agenda for that particular meeting as to like what's going first. Is there topics, speakers, what's happening in there? For our standpoint, advertising the actual event. So for us, it's great if we have 6 weeks or longer to promote it. But nonetheless, we push it in all of our local stuff and depending on what is going on in different ways to get the word out. Speakers, panelists, again, kind of comes back to the organization, but really thinking through, visualizing what that event looks like and what you're trying to accomplish. Providing accommodations depending on, again, what the topic is and who the audience. Facilitating the meeting. I think that's something important that we really talk about, like, is, again, visualizing that meeting. Who's leading it? Is there direction? Like, we want to make sure things are moving in the right based on the meeting, and then just doing a follow-up with attendees. If we're gonna ask people for feedback, we wanna then come back out and provide opportunities to get their information. So if we're asking for something, feedback, participation, engagement, we wanna follow up with them. Otherwise, we're like, hey, ask it, we're asking the community or something, and then we just take that, we're like, great, thanks. So I think that's important for our team to continually ask that. If we're gonna ask for feedback, we wanna share as to like how we use that feedback. As an example, when we met with, you heard from member Rodriguez on something, we took that and we're like, oh, we're on it. Like, we're gonna solve that problem and then highlight it. And so this is important for my team. I stress this a lot about like looking at your data, using metrics, and then following up on something that, so that's important. So this is really a strategy document. It doesn't like, it gets applied to particular events, but it's not something that, well, I'll just leave it at this. It's important for us to have this to make sure that we're being efficient and effective with our meetings. And so we're doing things like this on our events and different pieces throughout the year to just make our work that much more effective. So that's all I have on that. Any questions?
Looking to the board. And we can just pitch you things whenever? Is like that the kind of general idea?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's bring this up back at the vision piece, because I think it's an important piece. But
True.
From a town hall standpoint, whether it's like this group is like facilitating and thinking about like, hey, we want to solve this issue, or it's coming from council or somebody in the community, this just provides my team a roadmap for like how to be successful on it versus like, oh, just whatever anybody wants. It's like the topic is the most important piece. I constantly drive that in and try to make it clear as to what we're doing, and then really think through, does your audience want to hear this? Do you want to have 4 people at this event or 500? Like, what does that look like? What's really important? Are you engaging? Is this a town hall? Is this a focus group? Like, what exactly is this? And so by asking these questions and really thinking about it, at least moving forward, our intent is to just, do a better job at being clear and also trying to get more people to attend our meetings.
Wonderful. All right, that sounds good to me. Member Holterowicz?
Just a comment about the accommodations piece. I think in general that's a very good thing to have there. I think also though sometimes going a little bit further, depending on who your target audience is, and not just having an interpreter, but actually having the event be in the language of the people that you are intending to hear from, so that it feels more inclusive in that way, and facilitated by someone from their community is also, I think, is also very helpful. But and also location is very important. If it's often government buildings don't feel welcoming to a lot of people, so if there's ways to just a couple comments on feeling really invited.
I mean, these pieces are in there to get us thinking about moving in the right direction, and so it's not.
You can't have everything in there, but
like just on that, I'm glad you brought that up. For the accommodation side, if you're going to a community and you're specifically targeting, and that goes back to the audience, it's like, then how do you accomplish that? So this, much like our events checklist, it really just goes down the list of like everything from like porta potties to food vendors to accommodations of like, whatever it is. It's just really pre-visualizing the event and how that event looks successful. Like, it's been wildly, at least in my experience with government, is like taking that approach and really walking through it. It helps, like when you get to the event and you start planning that out, and then you look for issues of like, oh, well, 500 people are all going to show up at the same time. We need to rethink this. Like, what does that look like? How do you offset people coming all at the same time? If they do come, we need a lot of people. So it's just like, I think this is why it's a framework. It's just to say like, we need to be thinking in this way. And the audience piece is the audience, and also the accommodations, the 3 and 7, it ties into exactly what you're saying. Absolutely.
And I think just a general question about incentives. So if if the resources are available, what types of incentives might be considered to have people be giving up, a part of their busy day.
Yeah, so we're doing, like on this, so that's great, I'm glad you brought that up too, because depending on what it is and what we're trying to accomplish, like if we're gonna ask somebody to be there 3 hours from like 5 to 8, then that we have to feed people, like, or there has to be snacks or at least some drinks, like, and so. Yes, exactly. And so I think it's one of the things that we're looking at to make sure that as we move forward, we're putting our best foot forward. So, absolutely agree.
Any other questions, comments? Member Lange?
I don't have any questions. I do have a couple comments. I would take interpretation and translation out of an accommodation, as that should just be a part of language access as a whole and as a practice. And I would say at any time in language access that it can be a multilingual, bicultural, multicultural space, then to ensure that there's opportunity for that to be there. In some of my equity work in the county, we've been co-facilitating focus groups where Fijian, Spanish, and a dialect of Spanish is being spoken at the same time, so that people aren't being made to feel like they needed to have special accommodations made for them, but that the access to the language they need to participate is the focal point. So I think really modeling that would be a really noble step for the city. And I think accommodations would be recognizing that there needs to always be a plan for that. And lastly, on the bucket of incentive, but also if you're going to be gathering people to get insights and their perspectives, whether it's lived experience or expertise, there should always be something, right? Even if it's a $5 Starbucks card, to honor people's time and the commitment that they're bringing forward. Part of what I'm learning and work that I'm doing in community is that people feel like they've been extracted by systems and by government, and that it's not being turned around and or honored in such a way. There's a meeting that I come to as a part of the city of Santa Rosa at 5:00 and there's no food. And I literally sit there with my stomach growling the entire time. But I'm being asked to provide information, develop a program, and to participate, which is not a good use of my time. So just putting it out there does not feel good when people are hungry and sitting in a meeting and asked to contribute. Hint, hint.
Actually, we usually bring food and drinks to this meeting. We'll
I'm
start
not
that.
talking about this meeting.
Oh, we'll start after this meeting.
You can bring snacks next time.
But if you feel some
Got
kind
it.
of way, you should have brought some snacks.
We'll do better next time. All right, are there any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I do think I might have neglected to actually open up public comment for 6.2. So if we have any public comment for 6.2 or 6.3, now would be the time.
I don't have any on Zoom or in the community.
All right, there is no one in the room. So with that, we will close this item and we will move on to 6.4, the city's general plan update overview. And thanks to the planning team for being so patient. Appreciate you. And with that, Amy, feel free to take it away.
All right, thanks so much. Good evening, Chair Weeks and members of the Community Advisory Board. My name is Amy Lyle. I manage our long-range planning team here at the city. And then I also have Sherry Needs, our senior planner, who's basically managing this general plan at this point and doing many other great things. So we're here tonight to present the general plan for you and answer any questions and really ask for your help in promoting this work as well. So we're right in the midst of doing a lot of public engagement. And so I'll talk about what we have left in our community engagement work that's being done right now. Caitlin, are you going to advance things for me? Yes. Thank you so much. You can move to the next slide. So I'm going to start with just an overview of what a general plan is and what we've been working on to date. So the general plan is really the constitution for development in the city. And it's really updated only about every 10 years, 20 years in some jurisdictions. So it's a really unique opportunity to really engage in an effort that's going to set policy for a very long time. And once it's in place, it's very hard to change. So a lot of it is about the built environment. So how we interact with the city, locations of transportation facilities and neighborhoods and schools and housing and all of those things. But it's a lot more than that as well. Next slide, please. So it also looks at how we interact as a community. So this update includes an environmental justice element, well as health policy, food systems policies. It looks at education, violence prevention, public services, safety. It's a very comprehensive update. So it is really looking at how we impact people's lives within the city. Next slide, please. And you can move through the slide. Thank you. So the update that we're doing, most of it is defined by state law as far as what elements need to happen. So we have 9 required elements in California as to what we have to do. And then we're allowed to do optional elements. So here at the city, our existing general plan has a variety of optional elements. And so we are working at making a concise document that's easy to read, easy to implement, with metrics, really able to report out on, to use. And so we've done some combining of different elements and issues, along with the elements that we want just as a community that we know are important. Next slide, please. And so just where we're at in the process, we've been working on this for a couple years now, most of which has been during the pandemic, unfortunately. So this draft release, even though it looks like we're in the middle, is actually towards the end. So we did start with a community involvement strategy, and that was something we developed in-house here with our communications team and with a consultant team as well. And the council accepted that, so they did weigh in, and we asked for input on how we engage. So it was an interesting conversation around town halls, because we've really tried to do things differently and try to engage populations that don't normally participate, and really making sure that we go to communities instead of asking them to come to us. So I think, Lon's framework, it has been, that is a basic framework, and his team is really great about helping us build that out and not just do the standard thing that gets the same 10 people and really trying to do more. So there are a couple steps that we've done in the process, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I will say, as part of this, we are doing an environmental impact report. So that's going to be the next step. That's going to be released in November. And then both of those documents, the general plan and the environmental impact report, will come forward for another round of public input late winter, and for hopeful adoption around that time as well. So spring adoption is what we're hoping for. Next slide, please. So along the way, we do have a lot of work that's already been completed, and all of this is on our website, or you can come into the office and we'll give you hard copies as well. So that's the community involvement strategy that I mentioned. We also have an existing conditions report. So when you're talking about number of households, I was actually trying to look it up on my phone. There's so much data in that document. It's from 2020, so it's looking at mainly 2019 data, but that's a great place to go if you're really looking to have a deep dive on market studies, economic analysis, demographics. Even it incorporates a lot of the previous Portrait of Sonoma. We have a new version now. So that's the best data we had at that time. And so we use that along with other data sources to really inform the policies that are within the document. We have a briefing book, which is an executive summary of that existing conditions report. The vision statement is something that we developed with the community during the pandemic, but we really wanted to make sure we had some guiding principles as we developed the policy work to make sure that we knew what the community wanted, because this is a totally community-driven plan. And then we had alternatives process, and what that really means is land use and circulation scenarios. So I'll walk you through those in the next few slides too. Next slide, Caitlin, please. So this is the vision statement. So this is really a collection of words on our word flower, and then the actual statement itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read this statement. Santa Rosa is a diverse, equitable, and sustainable community built on civic engagement that empowers everyone to provide and support equal and affordable opportunities to obtain good housing, education and jobs, to enjoy vibrant cultural events and arts, and to live healthy lives in resilient neighborhoods that adapt to social and environmental change. So since our last general plan was adopted in 2009, we've had a lot happen. We've annexed Roseland, we've been through fires, we've been through pandemics, recession. There has been a lot of change. So this new policy document really needs to recognize really the trauma the community's been through and the poor decisions that my predecessors and our decision makers have made. 101 through the middle of the city, a mall, blocking Railroad Square in downtown, all those things. So we have this existing framework, and this really sets the vision of, okay, this is where community wants to go. And so how do we, make sure that we're staying with this vision as we move forward? Next slide, please. So the next part of that process was to start looking at the framework of how we want our city to grow and change. And so we put 3 scenarios out to the community and really asked, what do you think? And one was very much centered on downtown and the major corridors that we know where major shopping centers are, but very city centered. The next one was looking at a collection of neighborhoods. So really focusing growth and change in these key areas in the city that are a little bit of an extension beyond just the downtown core. And then the third is housing everywhere. And this is really our existing general plan. We allow housing everywhere. And Cal will tell you, we have a lot of single family zoning. We have a lot of sprawl.
Yep.
So we are not downzoning properties that will exist, but how do we, in the framework of climate action and safety, how do we start moving things in a different direction in the way that we can? Next slide, please. Oh, I thought I had the preferred alternative, but I will say, so what we heard is people wanted a blend. And so what we've drafted is a blend of those alternatives. So not housing everywhere, but more downtown and the neighborhood centric. So that's what we've drafted for you all in the community to review. Next slide, please. So just to go back to what is in the general plan, this does include an update to our climate action plan. So right now we have a standalone document. Best practice is telling us that you really need to incorporate that within your growth strategy. It needs to be looked at when it comes to circulation and mode shift and bike and pedestrian access and housing and all of those things. So our climate action plan will be incorporated. And the other thing to note is that we took the housing element out of this process because we had to move pretty fast on that. Housing element was drafted and adopted earlier this year. So I know some of you have been part of that process as well. I was way too fast and furious. We have to update that plan every 8 years. So it's a little bit of a chunk of time, whereas this general plan is looking at 2050. So we'll have multiple housing cycles within this. So housing element and safety, both of those get updated more often. All right, let's go to the next slide. So there's 2 new maps that are part of the work that we've done. This one is our equity priority areas. So this is the work of Beatrice, who I know a lot of you have worked with. She's our equity and public health planner. And what this is looking at CalEnviro Screen and a couple different other mapping areas. So the highest population of low income people and also the highest populations of people of color. So all of those intersect, and this is our equity priority populations and areas. So these are the areas that we know have been disinvested, disenfranchised, that need policy attention to be able to kind of right what's happened, right the wrongs. So you'll see throughout the document that we call out these specific areas as the focal point for a lot of investment. Next slide, please. And then we also have areas of change. So this is somewhat of a new concept. This came out of a lot of our community conversations. And this identifies, I forgot how many, there's like 20 neighborhoods that are going to be ripe for investment or potential housing density. It includes our downtown plan area, which we're honestly not really proposing to touch. Community just voiced what they wanted, and we just adopted that in 2020. So that's that vision is still intact, and this plan really just recognizes that process. But there's other specific plan areas. We have the Hearn Community Center area on that map as well. And then this also comes through with a lot of different data points, like where are food deserts, those equity priority areas, where are those neighborhoods? So how do we create a complete neighborhood for these specific areas? Next slide, please. So within the general plan itself, I'm just going to walk through the chapters very briefly. But the first one is land use and economic development. And there's not a huge amount of shifts in the land uses because our existing general plan, as I noted, is a little bit overbuilt. It's planning for more growth than we realized, a lot more growth than we realized. And so we're really trying to work within that existing framework. And then also the economic shifts are, instead of what some cities would be like, I want a big box or a big tax, something revenue generator. What we heard from the community is that we need more support for micro entrepreneurial uses. So things that are more neighborhood centric, neighborhood retail, more opportunities for residents to be able to start a business, live work opportunities, things like that. So there's a lot of policies in that framework to be able to kind of support the population we already have, and not so much something bold and big and new that we don't have here in Sonoma County or in Santa Rosa. Next slide, please. So we've combined a few areas here. So circulation, open space, conservation, and greenhouse gas reduction. So these all coalesce because there are so many co-benefits from those different subject areas. But this plan really represents a fundamental shift in how we look at transportation planning and how we prioritize funding. So we've worked very closely with our public works team, and this new element will prioritize bike and pedestrian and other modes, transit over automobiles. And so it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be really different. And we did just go to the bike and ped board last week. So we've been working closely with that board on an iterative process to make sure that the policies we were creating are in line with what they want to see. So they've been great, and there's a lot of bike and ped organizations that have been really wonderful to work with. Which I see your shirt. I'm guessing you're part of one. Thank you very much for all of your work.
Oh, is she a part of it? She is the one.
And so this also includes a lot of our greenhouse gas reduction work. And so these are the climate actions. We will also have an appendix that will serve as our climate action plan in a way. So that's going to include like the metrics and the work program that goes into the inner workings of the city. Like what is our wastewater treatment plant facilities doing, and what kind of savings are we looking to have in certain ways, and what kind of mode shift goals do we have for getting people out of their cars or onto bike lanes, things like that. I think that was all I was going to say on this slide. So
is this one, is number 3 where there's intersection with disaster preparedness,
we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So then we have our urban design, historic preservation, art and culture. So we are one of the few cities that currently we have our own element for art and culture. We have Tara Thompson, and she's a great asset to our city and wealth of information. And so we worked with her to basically rewrite those policies so it reflects what we heard from the community as far as the vibrancy that we hope to have here. So this also builds off of some of the policies in the downtown plan of just creating this cultural, vibrant center, kind of helping to realize that vision. And then we have a lot of policies related to historic preservation and urban design, much of which was carried forward. We have really strong cultural heritage board, which we know we have a lot of members and former members that are very involved in this work too. Next slide, please. So I think this is what you're getting to as far as safety. So we have a combo here of like climate resilience, safety, public services, and facilities. So obviously wildfires are top of mind, but we have a bunch of other disasters as well. So with all of these competing pieces, we wanted to make sure our safety element is really recognizing all of those things. So this is also looking at climate resilience with an equity lens too, of kind of understanding where our vulnerabilities are as a community and where that extra support needs to be. So when it comes to safety, some of the major moves that we have in this plan, which we've been working with the fire department on, are things like managed retreat. So looking at concepts that are usually employed for sea level rise or flooding, but we're looking at it for fire. So the Oakmont Board of, what are they, Board of Directors, Board of something, their homeowners association are actually interested in looking at that. So we've written in a pilot program to work with Oakmont on doing some kind of managed retreat opportunity there. We've also identified a policy to reduce or not increase densities within the wildland urban interface. So we are looking for feedback on all of these things. That one will definitely be a controversial one. So there's just a lot of different things that we're throwing out to the community and seeing, like, does this resonate? Is this going to get to the goal of what we've been hearing about, what everyone needs and is looking for? And some of these things haven't been done before. So we'll be hopefully kind of leading the way for other jurisdictions as well.
The reason I was asking about the intersection with number 3 is because recently there's been some conversation amongst disaster preparedness folks around transportation in sort of the managed retreat process. And there, from our understanding, there's a gap, not just citywide, but countywide in terms of available transportation for example, people who are experiencing homelessness along creek beds, et cetera, that kind of thing. There's not. So I can definitely dig into this more myself, but just curious if that's addressed.
Yeah, I think we address that at a high level because this is really kind of overarching, but we worked a lot with our emergency operations team to make sure that this worked for them and that also the more strategic things that happen on the ground are in their emergency operations plans, because those are supposed to be kind of real time within the season. What can we do when? So I think this hopefully will set up a lot of those activities and provide guidance, for instance, like language needs during emergencies and just cultural sensitivity and like things like that. So, but take a look and tell us what you think for sure. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. And then, so this is our health equity and environmental justice element. So this is creating a lot of new policy around environmental justice, which is a new requirement under state law, but there's honestly not a lot of jurisdictions that have actually written this element yet. And then also public health. So working with our county partners, and a lot of this work was actually funded through Kaiser Permanente, and really looking at Portrait of Sonoma and our metrics locally and like what do we need to do. So there's some pretty bold policies in here that we're kind of waiting to see what the community thinks. A lot of things around like drive-throughs and fast food and access to healthy foods, and a lot of carrot and stick approaches that we're hoping creates enough controversy that people engage in the process, Because we are very curious, like, is this,
Are you getting rid of In-N-Out? Because
believe me, when we bring this up, even with just our planning team, it gets kind of pretty heated.
Kick
It's,
Sonic first.
They're like Chick-fil-A's
Dutch
thing.
brothers. For the love of God, I would love to just stand out there and be like, you're fat enough, keep rolling. Like the line they create on Mendocino Avenue
That actually is a
is
safety hazard.
insufferable.
It is actually.
They need a
pretty bad.
second location is what I hear.
They have one.
it just happened now, and it actually is a little better.
The one on Hopper, it's always empty.
GHG, my friends, GHG.
Okay, sorry, Amy.
No problem. And that's, this is what
That was my
happens.
bad.
That's what we want to hear. Because I mean, really, so when it comes to climate change, there's state thresholds and state goals. But our council adopted a climate emergency resolution that says we need to be climate neutral by 2030, which is like yesterday and means we just need to get out of our cars today. And so we're still working on the greenhouse gas reduction strategy, and we anticipate being able to meet the state goals based on these policies. The carbon neutral by 2030 is quite a stretch, and you know, we're kind of gauging the readiness of the community, like, are you really serious about this? Because it will mean a real shift in how we live and work and play, like in Santa Rosa. And there's also just a lot of equity concerns about people not, you know, electric cars aren't affordable. We don't have the network to be able to offer that to people. So there's a lot of complex conversations that need to happen if we're really looking at carbon neutral by 2030. So this, we hope will start that conversation. We are going to be doing climate specific engagement. Sherry's going to be leading that. And so that work will be working with our climate action subcommittee as well. So I'll let her speak to that if there's questions after this. I think that's the last, maybe there's 2 more slides.
It's 3.
Okay.
How to get involved?
Yeah. So you can move to the next slide too. So we have multiple things happening right now. So we do have a public survey that's out. It has a lot of questions about some of those bold policies that I mentioned, but also just has an open-ended spot where you can just say what you think. And
That's fun for you guys.
You're gonna get in trouble on that one.
yeah,
Hopefully it's character limited.
I think it is, but you can write a good
For your sake,
paragraph.
I hope so.
Yeah, you can write some stuff.
You're traumatized from last night?
So we're doing a variety of different things, and we've been shifting how we do things every phase of this project, mainly because of the pandemic, but also just because if something doesn't work, we're gonna try something different. So this round, we have formal public workshops, town halls, and we've done 2, we have 2 more, and we've been hosting them at various locations, thinking about the populations we wanna have join us. So we have, we had one at Council on Aging, we had one at Finley. Is that Monday? That was Monday. And then we have one at the Latino Service Providers next week and one at the Rica Valley Library next week. We also partnered with the Food Systems Alliance and had a great conversation last night with their group and around food systems and urban agriculture, which is a new section for policy work that we've never done here at the city.
And
So-
we're going to Oakmont,
We're going to Oakmont.
in Oakmont, and we will have a virtual meeting in September.
Yes, and we will be checking that virtual box if people just don't want to come to meetings anymore. So we're not really doing the hybrid approach. We're doing it in person, and then we will have that virtual option. And then we're also doing pop-ups with the community. So we've been at so many events and different things, trying to promote the workshops, but also just hearing what people have to say and getting people to our survey. And we've been even doing them like food bank distributions and we're at the Wildfire Ready, Wednesday Night Market. We've been all over the place. So
SRJC Welcome Day.
yeah. So and then if there's any organizations that want us to come speak, we're game. So we're going to different organizations. If we have time, we're gonna do some focus groups too, because we like to design those based on what we didn't hear and who we didn't hear from. And so August and September are really our months to be able to get input on this work. I also want to give one example of what didn't work and what we did instead. Last event set around the alternatives, we had such a hard time getting youth engagement. So we did a whole bunch of work. One, we partnered with Montgomery High and actually were able to help write their curriculum. And so their was it
It was seniors in government and history.
and so we infiltrated their classes and they did their projects on our general plan. They did like, I don't know, 50 presentations that we went to.
Yeah.
It was really incredible.
Child labor.
Yeah, but we got them thinking, they got to learn more about city government and we got to hear what they thought and it was really wonderful. So we're hoping to kind of keep that work moving. We also partnered with an art engagement organization, Kibson Creative. And so we did a video with Juvenile Hall. We had an artist go in and do poetry with them. And they actually, she is a hip hop artist in the Bay Area, or maybe she's local. I think she's local. And she did a video, a music video and a song, like a rap song. And it's fantastic. So we're gonna be launching that this next week, I believe. So I'll make sure to send it so you all can get it on your emails as well. And then we did a coloring book with a local artist, and I wish I had one with me. It is so beautiful. So, and then that our art engagement group actually went to schools, primarily in our equity priority communities, and then day camps because it happened to be summer as well. And worked with students to do the coloring book, but it gave us input also. So we're just starting to get the input on what the youth wanted to do. And there was a third approach, and I can't even remember what it is now.
We
Oh,
did
the art installation.
The puzzle, yeah, the art installation.
Yeah, and so we had another artist that did an actual art installation. So we're hoping to bring that to City Hall or have it move around depending on where we're at. But we've been really trying to adapt and change to just the moment and what we're missing and who we haven't heard from. So you can go to the next slide, please. So that's our website. We have all the information up there. We would love to hear from you all as CAB members, but also if you have organizations that can help us promote. I've seen a lot of it on a lot of your websites already, so our Instagram and various places. So really appreciate the promotions. And yeah, we're here to answer any questions that you have.
All right, looking to the CAB members, are there any questions or concerns? Anything you'd like to raise?
One question.
Right, Asensio.
It's maybe a little technical or in the weeds, but you mentioned that land use isn't changing much except for the community has mentioned a need for micro businesses. And how would that be addressed? Like a new zoning type, or would that be reflected? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that can be done in different ways. So some of our policies suggest changes in our zoning code to be able to implement those. Some of them are just creating promotions or programs around what may already exist. But this plan will be in place for a long time. So it's very iterative and it will take a long time to implement. So it will be up to our decision makers on how they prioritize the work within it. So we have it in there, but it will be up to you all on the council and on where does that fall in line with the order of importance and how do we direct staff to work on those programs. So I will say also annually, we're required to report out on the implementation of the general plan. So we're gonna try that in an easier fashion where we're actually looking at each action. And then we'll say like, what's happening or nothing's happening or, being able to make that very transparent for the community to see and be able to advocate for certain things.
Okay, and then on that, is there any I guess the general plan update wouldn't address those very specific granular issues. Like for example, lowering the minor conditional use permit fees and things like that. That would be separate, or is that also part of the general plan update?
It is not.
Okay.
You could comment in that direction and we can look at adding a policy to provide that direction in the general plan. We also separately have an economic strategic plan underway. And I know they're looking for input on that plan. That's Raisa De La Rosa and her team. And that could be something a little faster pace that may need to happen if there's certain things under that minor use permit umbrella that you're looking to facilitate or.
Right, I'm just curious. And then my last question is just in terms of talking about the section on like sound, right? And is there anything for light pollution in like certain neighborhoods or things like that? Or is that something that's been looked at or investigated or?
Our zoning code, we do have outdoor lighting requirements. There's nothing as far as I know specific in the general plan to that, but it is in our zoning.
Got it. And then just one more comment. I think way back when I was in high school, we did have a presentation from the planning department at Elsie Allen. And that was a cool experience, so it's great that we're doing it in Montgomery. And is there any plans of doing it at other high schools?
Yes, Elsie Allen is actually another one that we
Fantastic.
identified. So we're waiting on direction to be able to do those things. But we still have one of the teachers at Montgomery High interested, and I think they knew someone one of the teachers at Elsie Allen that was also interested. So we'll see if we're able to do that.
All right, that would be great, actually. And that was it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And I just wanted to say, if I may, that one of the things that we are including in the general plan that kind of addresses sort of what you're talking about, one of the policies does say that, for example, farmers markets and food events and that type of thing wouldn't be allowed in any commercial zone, so.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
I just have a quick question. So with all this talk about more housing and, you know, a lot of it's south side of Santa Rosa, west side of Santa Rosa, do you ever look at, do you think about adding more hospitals, emergency rooms, and things like that? Because everything's all on the east side of town.
We had someone bring that up last night too, and unfortunately, the city, it's up to vendors and businesses and hospitals to see this as a market they would want to expand. Maybe Raisa would have some information, our economic development department, about any types of incentives or anything like that. Because, yeah, that was a concern.
Well, the hospitals are trying to get out of the ER business.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not something we have any control over. So we have policies to help try to influence things, but it's very hard to get them to do what we say.
And actually, that was Monday night, sorry, it wasn't last night, it was Monday night. So many meetings.
We also are running out of doctors and nurses. Not running out, but that is a problem.
I tried getting a primary care today and no luck.
Very difficult. Member Lange,
Yeah, my hand was definitely up. So I have a couple, I don't know, they're questions and comments, so work with me here. You guys know how my brain works by now. So I'm particularly interested, as Member Inocencio brought up, micro-entrepreneurial spaces. I hope if the team can visit, it's called Haven City Marketplace in Rancho Cucamonga and the Anaheim Meatpacking District, which have revamped old warehouse buildings that were left untouched and have turned them into creative, co-opt, working, and social media entrepreneurial space. So there's room and some of those, and food courts. So they each have a respectable amount of space for folks to like rent a room to like do their Instagram tiki-taki thing and like, I don't know what it's called. And you can like rent it for like, $10 for 25 minutes to film content. And it's either individual studio and the lighting's provided so the people don't have to come in with equipment, but it's already made available to them, or small space for dancers who are looking to like really make a market for themselves, which we know we have in our community. If you ever go to the top of the mall parking lot, it's a whole lot happening up there. And I think with food, we have a lot of small vendors who don't have the financial capital or access to, because of the limitations to funding, to be able to put together a cart formally, or a food truck, or even share cooking space, because we don't have that. the Vets Hall was down for a number of months, which impacted a lot of food vendors, and only some met the qualifications to cook out of Sonoma State. So if there's a shared space for which that could build a culinary opportunity for people, is something that's definitely of interest to me. And it brings together this micro network of business owners of all sorts and inspires more folks to take those kitchen passions, right? Like at a baker I used to use all the time, but the neighbors called the people on her because she was selling out of her home, even though she got permitted to do commercial baking, but it was a whole like legal thing, right? Because her neighbors are haters. But if she had a space that she could go to, like how much more different that would be instead of having to shut down and get a traditional job that she's not equipped to do. So that's where my passion in that comes to, because I think there would be a lot of opportunity, especially as we look at from the last economic forecast I went to, both for the county and that came out of the city of Santa Rosa. The most vibrant business district right now for entrepreneurs is in Roseland. And so looking at what it looks like to amplify culture, history, and people, which would be in alignment with everything else. I also think more attention and upkeep to those microeconomic communities that already exist. So ways in which, the big kerfuffle around the Peanuts crew being upset about an apartment complex coming to their neighborhood, but then when you look at the shopping center next door to it, could use some micro level support and both support the businesses that are open and to encourage people to come back into that area so that it's a win-win for everybody in that community, especially because that's near where I live. When we're looking at open space conservation and gas preservation, I think it's also going to be important to have conversations in community around folks who've been historically displaced because of the previous decisions of the mall and the 101. That's essentially why we don't have a Black community in Santa Rosa, because all of those Black families were displaced, both from South Park and along the corridor to put in for that infrastructure. So how do we do something that honors that history and legacy of people who are now fifth generation unsheltered in our community? Around the number 4, historic design, preservation, arts and culture, I think really important to that last point, recognizing that communities that were erased and displaced from some of the elements of how we celebrate culture and acknowledge who's here. We have one of the largest Fijian populations in the area. They had the prime minister from Fiji here, and I don't think anybody in this room probably knew about that. Cool. Right? Like that's a big deal and a huge sign of honor and respect in their culture and community that like none of us are aware of, and they just want to be invited in, frankly put. And I think when we talk about culture, we think about those smaller groups that are often left off of the AAPI representation chain as well when we put people in umbrella groups. And lastly, around these climate and public service, I think where I often get flustered in the ways in which our homegrown experts take over these meetings and public comment, which we saw last night with the housing element from the county, is that people get so weaseled into the details for which they are not the experts to determine the outcomes. I hope that there's a way that you can frame those public workshops in a way that couches that so that folks just frankly say what their concern is instead of trying to diagnose it without the fundamental tools and actual expertise to say whether a line can be drawn here or a road can be placed there. Because I think that really, as a young person who's politically engaged, it is one of the things that deters me from staying for 11 hours of discussion. But those folks have ample time because they have the privilege and the resources to sit there for hours on end. Whereas like I have a job and I have other stuff to do. So if there's a way that can be framed, yes, to bring people out, but like to help people understand, like, this is not for you to come up with all of your conspiracy theories of all the fires that have ever happened and worldly disasters and like the what ifs. But this is a moment to say, I'm concerned because my driveway has dry brush. Cool. Thank you. Bye. Like, bite size and move it out. And as someone who's grown up in regions where there are fires and disasters all the time, you cannot plan for all panic modes. You just can't. You have to take the feedback in and move it forward. And I hope that space can be one where all of the elements can come forward without it being a commandeered conversation on conspiracies.
If you have specific things on that,
I would love to hear it.
I think we look back at, I grew up in San Diego, so we went through 5 years of the October fires, right? Where you couldn't go outside essentially for 2 months because everything was freaking burning. Like, you just go back to what they did to mitigate those public comments and conversations, it would be public record because they had forums, same thing in Los Angeles, they burn all the time. And even when I lived there, there was opportunity for folks to share what they needed, but it was, this is how we're gonna conduct this meeting. And same when I lived in Oakland, when the hills caught fire and they kept on fire all the time because of the power poles. So like ways in which those teams could probably provide you with some of the tools that they put in place to mitigate some of those conversations from becoming hysteria sessions and really about like what are the root things that concern you that we can control versus like designing to a margin that is something that we don't even understand what happened.
And that actually altered the comments and the people coming.
Yeah. A group of us caravan from Mills up to the hills to go to that meeting. Because if the hills burn, so does college.
You remember any kind of time frame that would have been? It's kind of hard for me to look back if I don't have anything to start with.
For Mills, it would have been in the spring of 2010 for Oakland when the hillside caught fire off of Seminary and the 580. That's all.
I have nothing left to offer after all of that.
I was taking copious notes.
No, that was great. That was excellent. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share, comment? Keep in mind, you can confer with them after the fact as well. They're happy to take your comments. I have but one thing, because I know how to reach you. What is do you guys have any sort of social media, little fun tidbits, things that are already prepackaged or pre-prepared that we could maybe send out on something such as Nextdoor, general social media accounts?
Yes, we do.
Oh, perfect.
That are shareable for you all. Is that what
Yeah, I mean, I might augment
Great.
them, but if it's packaged into like 150 words, already ready to go, that would be really helpful for me so I could plug and play and get that information out in, a more efficient manner.
That'd be great, yeah. And I have to say, Generation Housing's been great about pushing out some of our things, so.
But yeah, if you have that content, that would be great. And that's for personal notes, like put in the neighborhood, et cetera. That would be swell. Other than that, I have nothing to add, because again, I can always talk to you afterwards. So with that, we will officially open it up for public comment.
Don't have any public comment on
And
it.
since this is only a presentation, we will say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for both coming. Really appreciate it. And we will see you all soon, I'm sure. So with that, I'd just like to ask, does anyone need to take like a 5-minute break, use the restroom, get water? Okay, well, with that, we'll just take a quick 5 and then we'll come right back. We're temporarily adjourned.
Quick nap.
I know my eyes are definitely burning. I've been to meetings since 9 a.m.
Are we still recording it live?
Yes, I can pause it.
Okay, so there's a kitchen down there.
Like.
I can't believe you drank from the sink. Ugh.
Santa Rosa said take All right, with that, we are back and we are moving on to item 6.5. And that item is going to be Community Advisory Board Vision Discussion. So this is an opportunity for the Community Advisory Board members to participate in an envisioning process to decide the path forward for the Community Advisory Board. So generally speaking, what we're trying to do is obviously COVID kind of threw a wrench in a lot of different things. One of which being, the Community Advisory Board, because what are we supposed to do when we're all locked up? And so what we're trying to take the opportunity to do now is kind of realign like our vision for, the Community Advisory Board. In the past, we did go through a consultant, I don't recall their name.
Civic Makers.
Civic Makers, thank you. And we did a lot of work around what our plan and what we wanted to kind of do and how we wanted to execute it. And it just kind of all got blown up. So now the timing of COVID was terrible.
No, we checked off the boxes.
Oh, actually, we didn't. No, sorry. We did Neighbor Fest. Sorry. It didn't blow up. We did do some of it, but.
We planned with no execution.
Correct. And so we did have actually some execution.
I'll give some.
Either way, the point being is this is an opportunity for us to kind of figure out how we want to proceed, maybe make some changes or propose changes to the charter. Changing the charter can be quite difficult, but it is not impossible. And if that's a subject or a conversation that we do want to revisit, this is the opportunity to kind of kick that off. We are obviously not going to cover everything in the time that we have left tonight. But this is a good opportunity to kind of set the foundation. And then, from there, we can build on it over the next couple of months. And hopefully comes 2024, which we will not have charter revisions by then, but we can have a general idea of how we want to kick off 2024 and do it in a strong and really kind of, I think, robust manner. So with that, I think I'm actually going to kick it over to Lon because he could probably take it a little further.
So on the charter revision piece, again, for my intent of this is to really just look at where we're at from a CAB, our staffing, how we coordinate. It's not necessarily to come back and look at the charter and make revisions. Any charter element would be in coordination with the council, city clerk, city manager's office. I'm looking at just like, here's the charter. This is what it says we do. Are we even doing that? Are we doing it well? Do we want to continue to do that? How can we improve stuff? I just want to highlight something that just happened a minute ago, and I was talking to Cal about this recently, is that Cal reached out to Amy and said, hey, I know you, let's connect. Can you send me that content? I want to share it. That's a great example of like what I want to see more of. And so I've been talking to Cal about this and Cherie. In a bigger picture as to like, I'm new to CAB, I'm walking into this and I'm asking myself, is this working the right way? Am I facilitating with this group? Am I providing this group with something? What is the group providing us? What does that communications look like? My team just expanded with the community engagement pieces, which is now connecting the CAB in a different way, but also connecting my entire team with this group in a way that's like, again, are we being most efficient? If I could start this committee from scratch right now, is it being run the same way? Would we all agree things are working properly? Are you happy with CAB? There's all these pieces that I'm like been thinking about over the last few months, but I want to kind of highlight a few pieces, and this goes back to what Cal was mentioning, Cal and Amy. The current structure of CAB, walking into it, is like I come to CAB and I'm speaking to CAB and our teams often like a speakers bureau would, meaning I would go out to the Elks Lodge and I'd go, hey, guess what's going on? We have a general plan update. It's really cool. It's fun. It's exciting. You should participate. And like CAB's, you're here, you're hearing it, you're getting that information, and then you're leaving. Whether you share it or not, you could go home and share it and write up a bunch of stuff on the general plan and everything you've reheard. And maybe you share it, maybe you don't, but we're not providing toolkits to CAB to be able to reshare that information easily. So like what happened tonight was something I was just telling Cal about, was that when we come and share info and I'm providing my reports, I'm first listening to everybody talk about what you guys have going on. And when you say something, I'm not going to re-repeat it. I know you said call out Wildfire Ready, but if you had already mentioned it, I'm not going to re-repeat it. But if we're trying to share information about future stuff like tacos with the cop or things like that, I want to provide that in a way that's meaningful to this group and also in a way that you could take that and reshare it easily by providing toolkits, which is the content and graphics and different elements of that either gets it and you push it out your own network, or you reshare on social things that are easy. We need to make it easy to extend our reach, which our reach is your reach, to the network that's way beyond. So when I go, again, I'm just looking at the CAB without a charter change to say like, can we do this differently? Like, how do we operate in a way that like is more efficient? And like, when I look at engagement pieces, I'm very connected into wanting to extend the reach of our communications and our efforts to engage more people to understand that what we're doing, and then reach out in the community. So that's the one for me when I'm looking at things that we can modify without charter piece at all. Like, how can I coordinate with Cal better? The second part to that is instead of us, like, again, just like this, going out in the community, like, you know, we're trying to create an event like NeighborFest as an example, a couple other places have done it, San Francisco. Like, in that environment, there was nothing going on. So like, let's go create one. And so they create this environment where people can come out, and it was successful at the time. There's a lot of things like that. But as we move back into regular environment, like back to the new normal, as to like, we're out in the public and stuff, we as a collective group in the city, we are often looking at like, how can I go out, share my message to a community or a group that is already established. They have a neighborhood community. They're doing a neighborhood event. There's a downtown Tuesday this, there's a Wednesday night that. Look, I'm going to take my message and my communications and my engagement to those events that already have a following, a connection, a network, a group, a culture, whatever that looks like. I'm more often than anything trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm looking at like, how can I share and connect with that community? It's much more effective. I want to just talk real quick about like an example. So when I was at Marin Water, I managed their communications and their engagement. And one of the things I would do is constantly push out info. I'd be like, cool event, water district's great, all these different pieces. And it was, you know, like, I'm not saying we didn't reach anybody, but I was trying to connect with like the community as a whole. And so from a speakers bureau standpoint, I in the same concept, thanks Dina, same concept, I went out and met with all the local agencies and anybody and everybody that would allow me to come meet with them. Elks Lodge, focus groups, library. I would literally go and talk about what was the great things that were going on, 25,000 acres of awesomeness, all the trails they had. And like, I started getting way more traction. People were coming to meetings, like feedback was coming. It was coming to where people were. I'd go to council meetings, talk all the money that we were spending in their community, how we're benefiting them. And all of a sudden my audience opened up and my reach was expanding in ways that was way beyond my effort of just like putting out the best press release or like the coolest social graphic. And I'm not knocking those efforts because we do them. But when I think about CAB and being effective and like trying to connect to the community, and also this group as a whole of like wanting to be a part of like the who's who and doing stuff that's fun and being a part out in the community. Wildfire Ready is a good example of things like that, where there's events that are going on that we could go and participate and extend our reach. So that's one part of it that I think, again, without even charter piece of like how we can possibly start thinking differently as CAB, which we can do that. So like a good example is, remember Rodriguez, she mentioned something like, this is lame. And Alexa and I were already had called the vendor. We're like, you're absolutely right. And they're like, oh, we'll put it in our product queue. And we were literally like, you guys, but like after that, we were talking and I was like, she's absolutely right. This is ridiculous. It's unacceptable. We need to solve this problem. And so for my team, I'm looking to hear from you guys in the community of what issues, and not just issues, but also opportunities. Like, hey, it'd be really cool to connect data. So Amy's talking about get data to look at it in a different way. And based on that, then we could do outreach to those who need it. And immediately it's like, yes, like I agree. So that's that, right? Now we're talking about communication that is coming from my team to this team and this team to my team. So the part in this, when I look over, I was just, by the way, we're getting a new member, which they'll come to the next meeting. So when I looked over the orientation packet to update it and just get ready to like do an orientation, I was reading over this and I just thought, we're not doing this. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna be like highlighting, hey, I'm like, we're kind of not doing it. So then it made me think about, all right, I need to talk to Calvin Shree when we're doing the agenda. And we kind of went down this list of the orientation packet and it was like one thing after another where like, I'm not saying we're not doing any of it, but like there's a lot of things that we're not kind of perfectly, not even say perfectly aligned, but it's not aligned with what we're saying to this new member that we're going to do. So like that in of itself made me think, we really need to rethink what it is that CAB is doing, align that in a way that is actually beneficial, again, to both parties. But let me just tie in one piece that it's the first thing. It says, the city charter requires the CAB to advise the city council on, and there's like 4 things: public safety issues, capital improvement projects, improvement plans for development issues, and recommending public improvement funds allocated to city council. Again, all those pieces, like none of those are happening because we're not advising council on these pieces. I don't go to council and update them. I'm not saying I don't talk to council, but this is definitely not in line. So then I started pulling up old charters, different things to try to align. What is CAB responsible for? What do we do? If there's one thing when you're like telling somebody, oh, I'm CAB, it's like, what do you do? And you're like, well, I go to these meetings and this like crazy guy Lon talks a lot with like that, again, looking at this, it's not in alignment with that. And so one of the things recently in looking at that is talking with the city manager is trying to expand a two-way communication with this group and with council. So like I do community empowerment updates. Currently it's a standing item on the agenda once a month, the first Tuesday. My plan is to expand that and include CAB updates. So like I can come back as an example and say, doesn't have to call out member Rodriguez, but like CAB outlined potential issues that were blah, blah, blah. Here's what the city's doing about it. We met with them, worked it out, worked with CAB, did some testing, we solved the problem. Member Holter came and talked about connecting data. Our team came back and did something about it. I'm very interested in hearing issues in the community that like we can immediately solve. And some we can't, it's not like I can solve all pieces, but some, it feels very tactile where I'm like, wait, we can do that. So I want to connect those dots with council and CAB as well to where it's like, I'm taking feedback from this group, much like the CRM, and we're asking people, hey, do you find a problem, report it. It's like you guys are in the community, you're hearing what's going on, you're riding bikes down the street, you're like dealing with housing, like it goes on and on issues. I'm taking notes, I'm listening, I'm trying to find those opportunities to make improvements in the city in all these different categories that, again, feel meaningful to this group, where you feel like, man, I'm a part of this team that's like making stuff happen. And then also then connecting the dots to tell council about like, here's this great work CAB is doing. And here's what we've done this time. And by the way, CAB's going to be at this upcoming meeting and we're collaborating on this piece. And so I think there's the missing piece to this is like connecting council in that way. And I think we could make that happen. So I have a lot of ideas, but again, it's like, this isn't my vision only. Like this is a group that like got involved in community engagement and wants to improve and be a part of that group. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to improve that. My final piece is, well, actually, I'll just leave it at that and turn it back over to you guys to like get your thoughts on this and opinions. I also, actually, this is one, I do want to say this, is that this is an initial conversation with this group. I realize I'm like talking to you about different pieces. I really want, we can answer some questions, but I want you really to think about what we're talking about and have another item on the agenda where we really kind of have some long-term conversations about what that looks like and think about it over the next month before we meet as to like, what does this mean? Like, how can I engage in that? How does that toolkit affect me? Can I get this from this team? What is, what does that look like when I say revisioning CAB, which doesn't mean charter change. It's just about how can we revisit this? What does the CIP look like? How can we engage in that in some way? Is the current way we're doing it the right way? Do we need more from that? Less? How does that look? And again, just if you even just look over the orientation packet as a starting point as to like what CAB's responsibility is and what you guys are actually doing. So with that, I'll turn it back to Cal.
We are over time, but if you guys want to provide some initial comments, that would probably be helpful just to kind of, excuse me, level set and get us to a place where we have like a solid foundation on which to kind of move forward next time. So if there's any initial comments on what Lon just said, now is the opportune time. Member Rodriguez.
One of my initial thoughts was, I know the previous staff, they were really great about just sending out an email like, here's what's going on, here's your opportunities to engage. And it was sort of a compiled list of all the events. So whether it was a bicycle meeting, general plan meeting, development, here's everything going on. It could have been like for the month or the couple weeks. You know, like, oh yeah, and I could plug it into my calendar. And then I could also sort of like share it as well. Whether then I could go back and look on the city social to share it. But it was like there in my email box, like everything going on.
Okay.
Versus me trying to like track it down from the city social or going through the city connection newsletter. So it was just a nice snapshot summary.
I would say that was probably the most helpful for me because I don't know if it's intentional, but not all things make it to all the city's platforms. So sometimes things that are on Facebook are not on Instagram. They don't come through Twitter, and then whatever order you want to go through there. And I think one of the things I was thinking about as you were sharing that was, what would it look like if CAB had a social media platform where we could, or as a part of the city's infrastructure and updates from CAB or highlights from council, just so there's a little bit more like robust content. So I think people follow those pages because they're looking for information. We don't have like street cred with name reputability to maybe have our own, but I think to like have, the specified community advisory board logo and that these grant opportunities are up and made available to people, I think could make a difference in visibility. I agree with you, like tackling on engagement that's already happening in the city and like planning ahead. And one of the things when I first came on board, there would be like these 9 things are happening over the next 6 months. Who from CAB can be there? And I think one of the things to her credit with Chair Graves would be like really staring at everybody of like who's going to sign up and like making sure there was some accountability for all of us to actively engage, because that's the whole point of signing up. At least I thought that was the purpose. And then I think really looking at like what is the accountability to the council members that are appointing us. My initial appointee didn't even interview me. He was like, I'll just appoint you because I'm stepping out of office and I'm told I have to do this. And whereas the new person asks to meet once a quarter and asks for updates, and they're a newly elected council member. So for them, it's like, what does CAB do? How can I support what you do? And go from there. And I think if there was a little bit more of a two-way street of interest, that would probably help help us understand how we could be more effective.
Right, and I think the connection back to like in talking with Cal and Cherie is that it is providing communication to the council on a frequent basis, like monthly, to where it's not out of sight, out of mind. They're hearing about like the work that CAB is doing at a higher level that keeps them like informed on what's going on, but also just like, hey, this is what the community is saying. Here's what CAB is doing, and here's the events that we're going to, and here's the solutions that we come up with based on some of the problems. So I think there's like an element to that I'm looking to solve, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think an example of like one entity that it works really well on is the Planning Commission, because those planners are very intentional about the decisions they make and what they approve and what they don't approve. And it's clear, it's very aligned with who appointed them. Not that I want that level of indoctrination, but I think it's important to recognize that there should be some insights into the things that we're working on that are both not just you reporting out, but them inquiring within around even the stuff. I mean, we know our community, they love email. I'm sure they're emailing them things all the time that could actually be funneled here for us to possibly discuss and invite those community members in too.
They're not on the TikTok-y.
Yeah, they're probably not doing TikToks. It's small. But it's probably the crew that does donuts on the top floor. Maybe that bothers people.
That'll straight.
Other members have comments? I know one of the things Cherie and I mentioned is we see a lot of value in the community, the CAB grant actually no. Anyways, the grants, we see a lot of value in that, and that's why, one of the things I would like to do is if we can demonstrate to Member Barnett's point earlier, if we can draw this down and demonstrate there's a sizable interest in these grants, there is an opportunity potentially we could make some sort of, or solicit the council for additional dollars in future fiscal cycles. So that's another, avenue we could take as well.
With those grants, and this is something that's come up before, but I don't know that we had an answer. Is there an accountability piece for the organizations to prove they actually use the funds? And if so, where do we showcase that so people, all of us with a vested interest, know that they used it?
Yes, so the grants now are funding forward, so they get the check and then they submit receipts. And then we do ask for a follow-up report of completion of project or completion of event. And that historically went to the community engagement coordinator, and then it would get reported back to CAB as a standing item, because the grants now, like with the quarterly system, it made sense of just bringing them in. So that would be a fantastic thing to find out, Lon, as far as when you're getting receipts and photographs from completed projects from the previous fiscal cycle, because of the fact that they're factored into a 1-year framework of completion. That also helps us as a board, because if the project doesn't happen, then that's a pool of money that goes potentially, I mean, they got the check. So there's always the accounting side of like, if they deposited the check, but the project didn't get completed, that gets a little murky. But if there are any that didn't complete funds, and I know, I don't know in between the Danielle to Daniel transition point, I don't know where that job task landed. But it was one, that's how we got the accountability back on CAB of, Danielle on a fairly regular basis would just let us know, like, of these approved projects, these ones are fully funded. Here's the report out from whatever the event was, whatever the project was. And then if there was something that was pending, she'd let us know.
Okay.
It would also be great to amplify these projects on social media. Case in point, the APIC event.
Be great to amplify CAB. These projects.
Look what, came of the money that, we were able to give to these folks for this event, or to our project, et cetera. I think that'd be really great if we could create that kind of.
I think it just adds more content to the social media platforms that I think people don't understand what we do. And if we show one way or two ways.
Yeah.
Right.
If we amplify it, we might get even greater interest. I'm certain we would.
Yeah.
I think amplifying on the front end, especially if there's events and things that we want people to come to, or volunteers, or.
Yeah.
Can help.
Does anyone else have initial guidance? I know we're over time. Comments, anything like provide? There will be a little homework this next month. Just make sure if you have any ideas, please share them directly with Lon, and we can, Member Holder.
The Citizen Engagement Academy. I don't know what that is. We can.
Yeah, that was out of the initial strategic plan, and there was a subcommittee, and that was supposed to be a way that CAB was going to be that nexus point, so that we were going to do an outreach to neighborhood organizations predominantly, and giving them a kind of a workshop toolkit so that they could then let the residents in their neighborhood know that, hey, this is the challenge, or this is the problem that you're seeking, resolution with the city on in your neighborhood. You would have ambassadors, right, kind of that have this higher level of elevated knowledge about civic engagement with the city that could then show folks like, this is the steps, right, to get through the process. That was the goal of that, and it came out of the strategic plan.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, I don't know if anybody on this board was from that subcommittee now. I wasn't, so yeah, I was operations, and we got all our stuff done. So that's why I picked operations, because I knew, I was like, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, done. So
there's not an actual vision statement for CAB though, right? There's a
there
mission.
is.
Oh, we created
There's a
one
mission statement. I mean,
during the
it's
Civic Maker
not that I could
process.
find online, I guess.
Yeah, it's.
There's a what does CAB do and a mission statement.
Yeah, we spent a fair amount of time actually crafting it.
Can you send that out again?
Well, there's.
Is it part of the homework?
On this, there is a current mission, but.
On- oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We did it with the strategic person.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
so
strategy
civic
piece.
makers.
Yeah.
It is, it's very convoluted. A lot of it is intertwined. But nonetheless, I think the item here is more about like, what does CAB look like from a standpoint of like the things we're mentioning. It's not necessarily to rewrite like what CAB is doing. The connection to city government to the community is apt. I mean, it's perfectly aligned. That's great. It's more of the actions from our team to this team and like connecting some of those dots. And it's a refinement. And when I look at it, it's more of like, I'm walking into this team is exactly doing everything that I need to be doing, vice versa. I mean, remember Rodriguez just talked about an email they used to see. I would love to get that to see if like you guys like that cadence and the frequency or the amount of info. But I as a part of that, to me, it was back to this, it was like providing you guys the toolkit to say, here's all the things that we have going on. It's in simple text, the graphics are here. You want to share it, it's there, the information you need, it's not too much, it's not too little, but it is already formatted. We already have all that. We're pushing it out in newsletters weekly. It's not that complicated for us to put it in some running list to where you can just get it, or once a month you get an email and here's all your opportunities. The events and things like that we're talking about, I think in future meetings, which by the way, we're going out and hopefully late October or mid-October for the community engagement manager position, putting that out, which this will be supporting the efforts that are happening. But I really want to talk to this group about community events and which ones we're going to focus on. Hypothetically, if there's 100, which 5 or 10 am I going to go to that have the biggest impact and reach that I can make a big difference in being a part of that group? And then and also that members of this team can also participate. And I'm not saying it's 5 or 10, I don't know what the number is, but I want to look at all those opportunities and figure out like, look, if we can only do one, which is the one? And if we can do 2, and what does that look like for our team to participate, that you guys know, like I go to this event every year, it crushes, it's huge, there's tons of people. That sounds like an event I want to be at.
Yeah.
That sounds like an event that CAB needs to participate, and here's why. And I'm not saying we can't go to smaller ones, but it's like something like Cherie's like, hey, I got this bike thing going on. I'm the only one that can go, but I'm still going, I'm going to represent. Like, awesome. So I at least for me, like if I'm going to focus effort and I have a staff person dedicated to do that, I want to know how that position could be the most effective within our limited capacity, within the amount of events, because there's tons of stuff. But what are we going to focus on that aligns with connecting the dots in this way?
Can we have some swag? We don't have name tags for public appearances.
We'll have to work on that. It comes out of the
Yeah.
budget, but that's something we should
do
definitely
have
discuss.
budget for that. We can definitely get names.
We did in the past.
Just shirts, things like that. So this is where I just want you guys to start thinking about like what that looks like. I would love CAB to be consistent. We just went to Wildfire Ready. We had shirts. The team looked like people knew we were a part of that group. I think there's definitely opportunities to, this is what I'm saying. It's the vision here. It's just like, how do we refine this in a way that is, you know, I mean, you guys are on this team. You've been for many years, and you know, I'm looking for some guidance as to like how to refine stuff. I've heard quite a few in individual conversations where it's like, oh, it'd be great if it's like, I'm listening.
Mhm.
So here's what we're gonna do, because I want to respect everyone's time. It's late. I'm personally hungry.
Let's get to the source.
So Lon, if you could do a follow-up email, kind of just capturing everything you've just said, you know, and put it and send it out to us. I think that'd be really helpful in kind of framing how we respond to you. I mean, already, you know, there's been several good ideas. So if you could send that out, that would be terrific. And I think that would set us up. And then obviously do a follow-up, you know, prior to our next meeting. And I think that would set us up for a really robust and good conversation. Hopefully we'll have more members here as well, in addition to our newest member, who was just brought on board. So, does that,
See who that is?
Who is that? Who is this person?
I forget, do you have?
Angelina Vasquez?
Who rotated off?
Chris Rogers, new appointment.
Yeah.
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 We're vacant.
So replacing Leslie Graves.
Yeah.
Okay, so two
Got it.
things. One, is there any public comments?
Yes, Public comments? No public comments.
No problem.
So many people
So
online,
with that,
There's one other item, 7, which is future
Yeah.
agenda items.
Can we just make the next meeting a working meeting?
I was gonna say, I think that might be the most appropriate.
Just, I think we all kind of suck at email right now.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself, I suck at email, so I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna do my best, but I'm more,
And I did want to bring to the board at Wildfire Ready, I had an opportunity to talk to former CAB member Jenny Lynn Holmes with Catholic Charities. She was actually there for the Fire Foundation, but the homeless count report just
Yeah.
published today. And I was talking with her, and historically, she came to this board even before she was a member of this board, and she would give that report, but also questions. She would dial down into the data if you wanted to know about what was going on with the homeless count, but then just the larger trends. And so I did want to bring it to this board. If you were interested in having her present about the homeless count report, she said she'd be more than willing, not just as a former CAD member, but that she'd be more than willing to come to this board. So I wanted to put it out to the group that she did offer.
Well, I don't see any reason,
I mean, not obviously like is a future agenda item, but I wanted to bring it to the board of, do you want to have her come in and really talk about?
Maybe October, November.
So, but it's a question for y'all, if you want to have her come and present and
We
talk about it.
we can talk about that. Yeah. All right, again, I want to respect everyone's, go
In
ahead.
our September meeting, can we talk about end of the year meeting dates?
Oh, yes,
The
of
holidays.
course. Yeah, it's always helpful to figure that out. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point.
Are you saying when, so we'll take
Uh,
them off during
Yeah,
the?
well, no, sometimes we trunk it,
We
we'll
merge
bunch them
meetings.
together or, so we just need to figure that out. So we should just have a discussion, ask the
September
call.
about November, December.
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
We typically merge November, December into a final
I don't
November
want to wait
meeting.
till October for that.
Because we all want to meet over Christmas.
But anyways, before everyone starts chatting, is there any public comment? All right, with
motion
that,
to adjourn.
actually, technically
Yeah.
speaking, all I have to say is the meeting is adjourned.
All right, good. I'm glad
Sorry to,
you're-
sorry
Glad
to.
you're all your ways, your policies.
I'll write down the vote on that.
Carlos blessing is power.
Just so.
Right. He's like, no,